The first time I saw Saturn's hexagonal storm, I was 8 years old. My father, an amateur astronomer, had set up his telescope in our backyard on a crisp autumn night. As I peered through the eyepiece, the ringed planet swam into focus, a golden orb hanging in the vast emptiness of space. But it was the storm that captured my imagination, a perfect hexagon crowning the planet's north pole, defying natural explanation. "What is it, Dad?" I asked, my voice filled with childlike wonder. He chuckled, ruffling my hair. "That, Zeke, is one of the great mysteries of our solar system. Some say it's just a quirk of fluid dynamics. Others think it might be something more extraordinary." I couldn't tear my eyes away from that enigmatic shape. Even then, I felt a pull, as if the storm was calling out to me across the vast distances of space. Little did I know that this moment would set me on a path that would lead to unimaginable horror. My name is Ezekiel Frost, and this is the story of how I pierced the veil and damned us all. The explosion rocked the scientific community like a seismic tremor. On a routine observation of Saturn, the Cassini-2 probe captured footage of a massive eruption within the eye of the hexagonal storm. The images were unprecedented, swirling clouds parting to reveal glimpses of impossible structures beneath. I was in my office at MIT when the news broke, poring over data from my latest experiments on quantum entanglement. My colleague and longtime friend, Dr. Imani Okoro, burst through the door without knocking, her dark eyes wide with excitement. "Zeke, have you seen the feeds?" she practically shouted, brandishing her tablet. "It's all over the networks. Something's happening on Saturn." I frowned, taking the device from her hands. As I watched the footage, I felt a chill run down my spine. The hexagon I'd been obsessed with for so long was changing, revealing glimpses of something that couldn't exist. "This can't be real," I muttered, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were false. The images were too clear, too consistent to be a hoax or a glitch. Imani nodded vigorously. "It's real, all right. NASA's already scrambling to put together a mission. Word is they're fast-tracking development of a new ship capable of surviving Saturn's atmosphere." I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. They'll need a team, experts in various fields to make sense of whatever this is. A sly smile spread across Imani's face. "That's the other thing. I got a call from Dr. Ayana Chen at NASA. She asked about you specifically." My heart skipped a beat. Dr. Chen was a legend in the field of astrophysics, known for her groundbreaking work on extrasolar phenomena. If she was involved, this was bigger than I could have imagined. "What did you tell her?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. Imani's grin widened. "I told her you've been obsessed with that damn hexagon since you were a kid, that you're the brightest mind in quantum physics I've ever met, and that you'd give your left arm for a chance to see it up close." I should have felt elated. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, a chance to unravel the mystery that had haunted my dreams for decades. But as I stared at the swirling vortex on the screen, I felt a flicker of unease. There was something ominous about that perfect geometric shape, something that whispered of cosmic secrets better left undisturbed. "Zeke?" Imani's voice pulled me from my reverie. "You okay? You looked like you were a million miles away for a second there." I forced a smile. Just thinking about the implications. If there really is something artificial down there. She nodded, her expression turning serious. "It would change everything. Our understanding of the universe, our place in it. Are you going to do it? If they offer you a spot on the mission..." I took a deep breath, pushing down the nagging sense of foreboding. How could I not? This is what I've been working towards my whole life. As the words left my mouth, I felt a sense of finality, as if I'd just signed some invisible cosmic contract. Little did I know that I had sealed not only my fate, but that of all humanity. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. NASA officially announced the Saturn Exploration Initiative, a joint venture with several private aerospace companies to develop a craft capable of penetrating the gas giant's atmosphere. They called it the Kronos, and it was unlike anything humanity had ever built before. Dr. Chen herself came to MIT to recruit me. She was a small woman with a commanding presence, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun. As we sat in my cluttered office, surrounded by whiteboards covered in equations, she laid out the parameters of the mission. "We're assembling a team of the brightest minds in various disciplines," she explained, her voice crisp and efficient. "Your work on quantum entanglement could be crucial in understanding the anomalies we've detected within the storm." I leaned forward, intrigued despite my lingering doubts. "What kind of anomalies are we talking about?" Dr. Chen's eyes gleamed with barely contained excitement. "Temporal distortions, gravitational fluctuations that defy our current models, and energy readings that, well, let's just say they make a supernova look like a firecracker." The implications were staggering. If what she was saying was true, we weren't just dealing with an alien structure. We were potentially facing technology so advanced it bordered on the impossible. "When do we leave?" I asked, my scientific curiosity overriding any remaining hesitation. Dr. Chen smiled, a predatory expression that did little to put me at ease. 3 months. We launch on the summer solstice." As she left, I sat back in my chair, my mind reeling. I should have felt elated, triumphant. Instead, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered a warning. I pushed it aside, focusing instead on the work ahead. There was so much to do, so much to prepare. I threw myself into the preparations with a fervor that bordered on obsession. Days blurred into weeks as I pored over data, ran simulations, and helped design new equipment for the mission. Imani worried about me, trying to drag me away from my work for meals or a moment of relaxation. "You're going to burn out before you even leave Earth," she chided one night, forcing a plate of food into my hands. "The mystery of Saturn will still be there tomorrow." I smiled wearily, realizing for the first time how exhausted I was. I know. It's just, this is bigger than anything we've ever encountered. I can't shake the feeling that we're not ready for what we might find." Imani's expression softened. "No one's ever ready to make history, Zeke. But if anyone can handle it, it's you." Her words were meant to be comforting, but they only added to the weight of responsibility I felt pressing down on me. As the launch date drew nearer, my dreams became haunted by visions of the hexagon, its perfect geometry warping into impossible shapes that hurt to look upon. The day finally arrived for me to meet the rest of the crew. We gathered at NASA's Johnson Space Center, a group of strangers brought together by an unprecedented mission. As we sat around a conference table, Dr. Chen made the introductions. "Dr. Ezekiel Frost, quantum physicist from MIT," she began, nodding in my direction. "His work on entanglement theory could be key to understanding the anomalies we've detected." I nodded, taking in the faces around me. To my left sat a woman with close-cropped silver hair and eyes like chips of blue ice. "Captain Lunara Vega," Dr. Chen continued, "former Air Force test pilot and veteran of 3 ISS missions." Lunara's gaze met mine, assessing. I had the distinct impression of being weighed and measured in that brief moment. Next was a man who looked more like a lumberjack than a scientist, his wild beard barely contained, and his eyes burning with an inner fire. "Dr. Cyrus Blackwood, our chief engineer. There's not a machine he can't build or fix." Cyrus grunted in acknowledgement, his fingers twitching as if longing for a tool to tinker with. The woman beside him was a study in contrasts, petite and delicate-looking, with almond-shaped eyes that held a keen intelligence. "Dr. Yuki Nakamura, xenobiologist. If we encounter any form of life, she's our best hope of understanding it." Yuki offered a small, polite bow. "It's an honor to work with you all." The final member of our team was a tall, lanky man with skin the color of burnished copper and a shock of prematurely white hair. And lastly, Dr. Asim Kapoor, our astrophysicist and expert on Saturn's unique properties. Asim's face split into a wide grin. "Ah, Dr. Frost. I've read your papers on quantum foam. Fascinating stuff. I have some theories about how it might relate to the storm's structure." Dr. Chen cleared her throat, cutting off what promised to be a lengthy scientific discussion. "You'll have plenty of time to compare notes on the journey. For now, let's focus on the mission parameters." As she began to outline the details of our expedition, I found my attention wandering, studying my new teammates. We were an eclectic group, each bringing our own expertise and quirks to the table. But would it be enough to face whatever awaited us in the depths of Saturn's atmosphere? The next few weeks were a blur of simulations, medical exams, and last-minute preparations. We trained together in mock-ups of the Kronos, learning to work as a cohesive unit. Slowly, our initial awkwardness gave way to a tentative camaraderie. Lunara proved to be a stern but fair leader, pushing us to our limits, but never beyond. Cyrus's gruff exterior hid a dry wit that often had us in stitches during downtime. Yuki's quiet demeanor belied a fierce intellect and a surprising competitive streak in our training exercises. And Asim's boundless enthusiasm was infectious, even in the face of grueling 16-hour days. As for me, I found myself slipping into the role of the team's problem solver, my mind constantly churning with possibilities and contingencies. It was Yuki who first dubbed me the Quantum Quandary, a nickname that stuck despite my half-hearted protests. One night, about a week before launch, I found myself unable to sleep. The enormity of what we were about to attempt weighed heavily on my mind. I made my way to the observation deck, hoping to clear my head, only to find Asim already there, gazing up at the stars. "Ah, Ezekiel, come to commune with the cosmos as well?" he asked, his voice hushed with reverence. I chuckled, moving to stand beside him. "Something like that. Just feeling a bit overwhelmed, I suppose." Asim nodded sagely. "It is a heavy thing to be the first to pierce the veil of the unknown. But think of the wonders we might see, the secrets we might uncover." His enthusiasm was almost enough to quell the unease that had been growing in the pit of my stomach. Almost. "What if we're not ready?" I asked quietly, voicing the fear that had been nagging at me for months. "What if what we find out there is beyond our comprehension?" Asim was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. "My friend, no great discovery has ever been made by those who were fully prepared. We step into the unknown precisely because it is unknown. That is the beauty and the terror of exploration." His words stayed with me as I finally drifted off to sleep that night. The beauty and the terror of exploration. Little did I know how prophetic those words would prove to be. Launch day arrived with a mix of anticipation and dread. As we donned our sleek new spacesuits, each of us lost in our own thoughts, Lunara gathered us for one final briefing. "This is it, people," she said, her voice steady and confident. "Everything we've trained for comes down to this moment. Whatever we find out there, we face it together. Clear?" We nodded, a solemn agreement passing between us. As we made our way to the launch pad, I caught sight of Imani in the crowd of onlookers. She gave me a thumbs up, mouthing, "Kick some cosmic ass." I managed a weak smile in return, hoping it didn't betray the turmoil in my gut. The Kronos was a marvel of engineering, its sleek lines belying the incredible technology packed within. As we strapped ourselves in, Cyrus ran through the pre-flight checklist, his usual gruffness replaced by an almost reverent focus. "All systems nominal," he reported. "We're good to go, Captain." Lunara's voice came over the comm, cool and collected. "Roger that. Mission Control, this is Kronos. We are ready for launch." The countdown seemed to last an eternity and no time at all. As the engines roared to life, I closed my eyes, offering a silent prayer to whatever cosmic forces might be listening. "Please, let us be ready for what we find." The G-forces pressed us back into our seats as we broke free of Earth's gravity. Through the viewport, I watched our home planet shrink to a pale blue dot, and for the first time, the true scale of our journey hit me. We were leaving behind everything we knew, venturing into the depths of the solar system on a hunch and a prayer. As we settled into our journey, life aboard the Kronos fell into a rhythm. Days were filled with system checks, data analysis, and endless speculation about what we might find. Nights, or what passed for nights in the eternal twilight of space, were for quiet contemplation and the sort of deep conversations that only seemed to happen in the small hours. It was during one of these late-night talks that I really got to know Yuki. I found her in the ship's small observation bubble, staring out at the star-flecked void. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked, floating over to join her. She shook her head, a wry smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Too much on my mind. You?" "Same," I admitted. "I keep thinking about what we might find, trying to prepare myself for every possibility." Yuki was quiet for a moment, her dark eyes reflecting the pinpricks of distant suns. "You know," she said finally, "my grandmother used to tell me stories about the yokai, spirits from Japanese folklore. Some were benevolent, others malicious. But the most dangerous were always the ones you couldn't categorize, the ones that defied human understanding." I felt a chill run down my spine. "You think that's what we're dealing with? Some kind of cosmic spirits?" She laughed softly, but there was little humor in it. "I think we're dealing with something so far beyond our comprehension that spirits might be the closest analogy we have. Whatever built that structure in Saturn's storm, I doubt it thinks in terms we can understand." Her words echoed in my mind long after we'd said goodnight. As I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the image of ancient, incomprehensible beings watching our approach with alien curiosity. The months stretched on, marked by the steady tick of the atomic clock and the growing bulk of Saturn in our viewports. We passed the time with research, simulations, and endless debate about what we might find. Cyrus tinkered endlessly with the ship's systems, pushing its capabilities to the limit. Asim pored over the scant data we had, developing increasingly wild theories that he would expound upon at length during meals. Even the usually stoic Lunara couldn't hide her anticipation as we made our final approach. Saturn loomed large before us, its magnificent rings stretching across the star-speckled void. But it was the hexagon that drew our gaze. A perfect six-sided hurricane larger than Earth itself, eternally churning at the planet's north pole. "My God," Asim breathed as we entered orbit. "It's even more beautiful up close." We spent several days circling the planet, running scans and collecting data. But it was clear our true goal lay at the heart of that enigmatic storm. After extensive preparation and no small amount of trepidation, Lunara gave the order to begin our descent. The Kronos shuddered as we pierced the outer layers of Saturn's atmosphere. Warning klaxons blared as wind speeds reached impossible velocities. I gripped my restraints, knuckles white, certain that at any moment the ship would be torn apart. "Hull integrity at 87% and holding," Cyrus called out, his voice tight with tension. His fingers danced across the engineering console, making minute adjustments to our shields. "We're still within acceptable parameters, but this storm is unlike anything we've ever encountered." Lunara's hands flew across the controls, wrestling with forces beyond human comprehension. Her jaw was set in grim determination, eyes narrowed in concentration. "Approaching the outer boundary of the hexagon, brace for extreme turbulence." The next few minutes were a hellish blur of noise and motion. Alarms screamed, metal groaned, my stomach lurched as we were tossed about like leaves in a hurricane. The viewport was a chaos of swirling gases, flashes of lightning illuminating roiling clouds in sickly yellows and reds. "This is impossible," Asim muttered beside me, his eyes wide with a mix of terror and awe. "The energy readings are off the charts. It's like the storm is alive somehow." Before I could respond, a particularly violent jolt sent us spinning. For a heart-stopping moment, I was sure we were done for. Then Lunara's voice cut through the cacophony, steady as ever. "Stabilizers engaged. We're leveling out." As if on cue, an eerie calm settled over the ship. The alarms fell silent, leaving only the sound of our ragged breathing. "We've breached the eye," Yuki announced, her voice filled with wonder. "We're inside the hexagon." I looked out the viewport and felt my breath catch in my throat. We were surrounded by a wall of swirling clouds, perfectly geometric in shape. They towered miles high, moving with an unnatural synchronicity that defied all meteorological understanding. Flashes of energy pulsed through the storm wall, following patterns that tickled at the edge of comprehension. But it was what lay beneath that truly stole my breath away. As the clouds parted, we caught our first glimpse of the impossible, an alien megastructure of staggering proportions. Massive obsidian spires stretched towards the sky, their surfaces etched with glowing sigils of unknown origin. Vast platforms of some dark metal hung suspended in the turbulent atmosphere, connected by bridges that seemed to defy physics. "My God," Asim whispered, his earlier enthusiasm replaced by a sort of reverent horror. "We were right. There's a whole civilization down here." Lunara's voice cut through our awe, ever the voice of reason and duty. "Stay focused, people. We need to find a place to set down. Cyrus, what's the status on those platforms? Can they support our weight?" Cyrus frowned, scrutinizing his readings. "Hard to say, Captain. The material is like nothing I've ever seen. It's not registering as metal exactly, but it's definitely solid. Might be our best bet for a landing site." "Any sign of life?" Yuki asked, leaning forward to peer through the viewport. "Active technology? Energy signatures?" I checked my own instruments, shaking my head. "Nothing definitive. There are energy fluctuations, but they're strange, not following any patterns we'd associate with artificial power sources." "Could be shielded," Asim suggested, "or operating on principles we don't understand yet." Lunara nodded, considering our options. "We'll do a low pass over one of the larger platforms. Cyrus, prep for landing. Everyone else, eyes open. I want to know the second anyone sees anything that could be a threat." As we descended towards the alien structure, I felt a growing sense of unease. The sigils etched into the surface seemed to shift and writhe, forming patterns that hurt my eyes to look at directly. And there was something else, a sort of pressure at the back of my mind, like the feeling just before a thunderstorm breaks. "Anyone else feel that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Yuki nodded, her face pale. "It's like a presence, watching us." "Probably just the atmospheric pressure playing tricks on us," Asim said, but he didn't sound convinced. It took nearly an hour of careful maneuvering, but we finally located a relatively stable platform large enough to accommodate the Kronos. As the landing gear touched down with a soft thud, I felt a mix of elation and dread settle in my stomach. We had done it. We were the first humans to set foot on an alien world. But at what cost? The next few hours were a frenzy of activity as we prepared for our first expedition. We donned our protective suits, designed to withstand the harsh Saturnian atmosphere, and ran through final equipment checks. "Remember," Lunara cautioned as we gathered at the airlock, "we stick together. No wandering off, no unnecessary risks. We're here to observe and collect data, nothing more. And keep in constant communication. I want to know if anyone so much as sneezes funny out there." With a hiss of equalizing pressure, the outer door slid open. We stepped out onto the alien surface, our boots clanging against the strange metal. I looked up and felt a wave of vertigo wash over me. The hexagonal storm raged above, a titanic maelstrom that seemed to consume the entire sky. "Cyrus, what are you getting from the surface material?" Lunara asked, her voice slightly distorted through the comm. The engineer knelt, running a gloved hand over the platform. "It's weird, smooth, but with a sort of give to it, almost organic. And these markings," he traced one of the glowing sigils. "They're not just surface decoration. They seem to go all the way through the material." "Temperature is hovering around minus 178 degrees Celsius, Asim reported, checking his instruments. "Atmosphere is mostly hydrogen and helium, with trace amounts of..." That's odd." "What is it?" I asked, moving to look over his shoulder. He frowned, adjusting a dial. "I'm picking up traces of complex organic molecules. Shouldn't be possible at these temperatures and pressures." "Unless something's producing them," Yuki said quietly. "Something alive." We exchanged uneasy glances. The implication hung in the air, unspoken but impossible to ignore. If there was life here, it was nothing like anything we had encountered before. We spent the next few hours exploring the immediate vicinity of our landing site, collecting samples and taking readings. The architecture defied easy categorization. It was both brutally angular and organically curved, as if grown rather than built. Strange symbols adorned every surface, pulsing with an inner light that seemed to shift and change as we watched. "These markings," Yuki mused, running a gloved hand over a nearby pillar. "They're not just decorative. I think they're some kind of language," Cyrus snorted. "Language? Looks like gibberish to me." But I saw what Yuki meant. There was a pattern to the symbols, a rhythm that tickled at the edge of comprehension. I found my eyes drawn to them, tracing their contours as if I could unlock their meaning through sheer force of will. As I stared, I felt that strange pressure in my mind again, stronger now. The sigils seemed to move, rearranging themselves before my eyes. For a moment, just a moment, I thought I understood. A flash of meaning, vast and terrible, seared across my consciousness. I staggered back with a gasp, blinking rapidly. The others turned to look at me, concern evident even through their faceplates. "Zeke? You okay?" Lunara asked, moving to steady me. I nodded, trying to shake off the lingering sense of something. "Yeah, I just got a little dizzy for a second there. I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. The glimpse I had seen, or thought I had seen, haunted me. It spoke of ages beyond counting, of being so vast and ancient that our entire civilization was less than a blink in their existence. And it whispered of a purpose, a grand experiment for which our arrival was both unexpected and eerily anticipated. It was Asim who first noticed the structure. "Hey, what's that over there?" We followed his pointing finger and saw it, a massive edifice rising from the swirling mists. Unlike the other buildings we'd encountered, this one seemed to pulse with an inner energy. Tendrils of some dark substance writhed across its surface, forming and reforming into alien geometries. "We should check it out," Asim said, his voice filled with barely contained excitement. Lunara frowned. "I don't know. It could be dangerous." "Everything here is dangerous," Cyrus grumbled. "Might as well see what's so special about this one." In the end, curiosity won out over caution. We made our way towards the structure, each step filling me with a growing sense of unease. As we drew closer, I could feel a vibration in the air, a low thrumming that seemed to resonate in my bones. We were perhaps 100 yards away when it happened. The vibration intensified, building to a crescendo that made my teeth ache, and then, from the void above, a voice rolled across the sky. It began as a low rumble, like the growl of a slumbering beast stirring deep beneath the world. The air itself trembled, vibrating with a force beyond comprehension. Then the voice, if it could even be called a voice, crashed over us like a tidal wave of sound. It was vast, not just loud, but omnipresent, pressing into our bones, our minds, our very souls. Every syllable echoed with a weight that seemed to warp reality itself, making the sky darken and the ground tremble beneath our feet. The voice was not human. It was ancient, terrible, laced with a cosmic authority that shattered any illusion of human dominance. Words boomed out, incomprehensible at first, then slowly bending into meaning as if the universe itself was reshaping to force understanding into our fragile mortal minds.
"Intruders, you trespass where you do not belong."
We stood frozen, paralyzed by terror and awe. I wanted to run, to hide, but my body refused to obey. All I could do was stare up at the roiling storm above as the voice continued.
"We are the guardians of the void, the keepers of cosmic order. For eons we have watched and waited, hidden from the eyes of lesser beings."
A sound like mountains grinding together shook the air. Laughter, I realized with dawning horror. The entity was laughing at us. Your kind amuses us, scurrying about your tiny worlds, imagining yourselves masters of the cosmos. But you are less than motes of dust to us, barely worthy of notice." Beside me, I heard Yuki whimper. Asim had fallen to his knees, hands clasped over his helmet as if he could somehow shut out the overwhelming presence. Even Lunara, our pillar of strength, swayed on her feet.
"The storm was our shield, a veil to hide us from prying eyes. But you have pierced that veil, little ones. You have seen what was not meant to be seen."
A wave of dread washed over me as I realized the implications of those words. We were never meant to find this place. Our arrival had shattered some cosmic seal, and now... "You cannot be allowed to leave," the voice boomed, confirming my worst fears. "The secret must be kept. You will remain here, new subjects for our grand experiment." "No." Lunara's shout was barely audible over the entity's overwhelming presence. "We have to get back to the ship." Her words broke the spell of paralysis that had gripped us. As one, we turned and ran, scrambling back towards the Chronos. But with each step, the world around us seemed to twist and warp. Distances stretched impossibly. Familiar landmarks shifted and changed. We reached the ship, but it felt wrong somehow. The sleek lines had become jagged and alien, the metal pulsing with the same strange energy we'd seen on the structures around us. Cyrus slammed his hand against the airlock controls, cursing as they failed to respond. "It's not working, the ship, it's changed." A cold certainty settled in my gut. We were trapped. The entity, whatever it was, had reshaped our only means of escape into something unrecognizable. Asim was at the communications array, desperately trying to send a message back to Earth, but all we got was static, the storm above blocking any hope of contact with the outside world. "What do we do now?" Yuki asked, her voice trembling. Before anyone could answer, the world around us began to shift once more. The platform beneath our feet rippled like water, and suddenly we were sinking, being pulled down into the depths of Saturn's atmosphere. The last thing I saw before the clouds swallowed us was the hexagonal storm above, its perfect geometry now a mocking reminder of our hubris. We had come seeking knowledge, and found only terror. We had pierced the veil, and now we would pay the price. As consciousness faded, I heard the entity's voice, one final time, echoing through the vastness of space and time.
"Welcome to eternity, little ones. Your journey has only just begun."
In that moment, I knew with terrifying certainty that we would never see Earth again. The hexagonal storm had become our prison, a cosmic abyss from which there was no escape, and in the darkness that followed, I could only pray for the mercy of oblivion. But as the alien presence flooded my mind, filling me with knowledge vast and terrible, I realized that no such mercy would be granted. Our torment, like the storm itself, would be eternal.